All right, I'll go ahead and get us started. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the August monthly meeting of the Human Trafficking Task Force of Southern Colorado. For those of you that are new, my name is Julie Beller, and I am the chair of the board of directors for this amazing organization. And it's truly an honor to be a part of the board of directors for this organization and an active member in the Colorado Springs community. We really are blessed to have a lot of people and a lot of organizations that are becoming more aware about this issue and wanting to do something about it. As most of you know, a month ago, I excitedly announced that we would be in person for this meeting. And unfortunately, that got changed due to a staff retreat at our normal venue, First United Methodist Church. And their facilities are closed for a majority of this week. So we were not able to do that. And I apologize for the sudden change back to 100% virtual. But thank you for rolling with the punches and logging in. And we are glad to have you with us virtually once again. And we're crossing our fingers that September we'll be able to be together in person. If anything changes on that, of course, we'll send out an email. But our hope is that we'll be able to be with each other again. A couple of quick housekeeping items before we fully get started. Please stay muted during the meeting. It just helps us everything move along more smoothly to not have people chatting, but do use the chat function to talk with each other and get connected. Most of you have already started doing that. And it's really quite cool to see new people join our meeting almost every time we have new people joining us from around the nation. I'm so thankful that you have found out who we are and that you feel welcome to join our meetings and that you come and get engaged. We're so appreciative that you're here. If you have a question for our speaker later, please send a private message to host Leona Straight. Put the word question all in caps in the front of that so she can track those easily for us. So again, please send a private message to host Leona Straight. And she will be able to field those to our speaker after the presentation is over. As you know, we are the Human Trafficking Task Force of Southern Colorado. We are a grassroots nonprofit organization based in Colorado Springs. We have been active in this community for 13 years now, and everything that we do stems from the passion and drive of our board members and our amazing volunteers and people like you in our community. Our vision is to end modern-day slavery in Southern Colorado. Our mission is to be involved in preventing labor and sex trafficking through awareness and advocacy, intervening in the human trafficking cycle through collaboration with individuals, agencies, and organizations, and connecting those impacted by modern-day slavery to restorative services. Some of the things we do, monthly meetings like the one you're attending now, community presentations. If you're interested in having somebody present to a small group or even a large group, you can reach out to us at info@ht-colorado.org. We are happy to meet with you and to fill any presentation needs that you might have. Yearly, we have a symposium. Our symposium this year will be held on October 23rd, and Kathy Cook will have some more information for you in just a little bit. We have also historically held Advocacy Day at the Capitol. The past couple of years, we've run into a couple of bumps, but we are trying to revision what this event is. If you're interested in getting involved with Advocacy Day, looking at legislation and how to get people involved, again, reach out to us. We'd love to have you volunteer. We run a diversion program alongside the 4th Judicial District Attorney's Office. This program is for individuals that have been arrested on charges of prostitution. And we are able to meet with them, hold some sessions, offer them services, and hopefully get them started on a better path in life. We also offer survivor support in many forms, financial and otherwise. And that's what we do. We do have a few announcements, and I believe if I can figure out how to unmute Seuss Hess. Where are you? There you are.
Hey there. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. We are excited. We have celebrated 10 years of ministry, of working and walking with sex survivors. So we want to celebrate. We want to invite you to celebrate with us. At the same time, we have recognized our name is not always as welcoming to survivors as what we had originally hoped it would be. So at Our celebration dinner on Sunday, September 12th, we will be launching a new name. Y'all are invited. You need to go to the Restore Innocence website and click through to get tickets. They're only $40 a person, and we have limited seating. So the sooner you go and get a ticket, the better. Thanks.
Great. That's so exciting that you've reached 10 years. That's really a big milestone. And I know that Restore has gone through a lot of things, and you have a great future ahead of you. So I'm excited to celebrate with you. Next we have, I'd actually really like to introduce Cynthia Campbell. She is with Loving Our Children Incorporated, and I met her years ago at just one of the regular monthly meetings, obviously in person, but we've not been able to introduce her and her organization and some of the things that she does in our community in the anti-trafficking movement. So Cynthia, would you join us for your announcements?
Hi, how are you guys doing? I'm so honored to be here. We have been really busy with Loving Our Children this year with in regards to human trafficking. We finally have been able to go into a lot of the biopic areas that have been resistant to human trafficking and letting people in. So I'm very excited. We've had one event, we have 2 more scheduled, and we are just growing. But I want to a little bit about me. I am a survivor. I didn't tell anyone until I came to one of the human trafficking meetings years and years after it happened, after 20 years actually. And in one of the meetings, I finally felt safe to speak up. So always, I'm a supporter, and we're also on October 16th, we are having a A21 walk for freedom. Walk at the Prospect Lake, and anyone that wants to come, bring their information, or even if you can't come, we will get out the information packets to the people that all come to the walk. We actually had 2 girls rescued, retrieved from their trafficker last year, so we're excited about that. If it's just one that we reach, we're happy, but last year it was 2. So the information's here, and I'll also just put a link there. Thank you guys for having me.
Great. Thanks, Cynthia, for joining us, and we hope to connect with you more in the future. Next, we have Miss Joey Neff with SACSOM. And we also, you know, if we can all clap our hands, Joey's the one that has helped us run these meetings all this time, and they wouldn't be happening without her. And she volunteers for SACSOM as well as us. So Joey, thank you, because you're amazing.
Thank you so much, Julie, and ditto. So real quick, I've been trying to make this announcement for quite a while, but now I'm in desperate need. So many of you know and love SACSOM as much as I do. And we currently, like I said, are in desperate need of volunteers to help with some events. As you know, COVID literally kind of smashed all of our business ventures, and it hit Cambodia extremely hard, to the point that they were all closed in, couldn't leave home, and Eric and Jenny, the founders, were trying to figure out a way to get the materials from the warehouse or wherever that was to the homes, so that people could actually continue their artisanship and continue to provide for their families and stay employed. They don't have resources that we're lucky enough to have in the United States. So they were shut down. Eric and Jenny actually moved to Florida for 6 months so they could have outdoor events, and now they're back and we're excited, hitting the ground, ready to go. So if you don't know, SACSOM means to make new again, filled with dignity and purpose. And it's more than fair trade, it's actually sustainable living. Job creation is one of the methods that we use to help individuals make a choice for a better tomorrow. We work in poor and vulnerable communities, providing safe and sustainable employment for those most at risk of trafficking, forced labor, exploitation, and abuse. Forgive me, I am reading notes from Facebook. This is directly from Ginny. Our prevention programs influence children, women, and men in our community, and we work closely with our local government. By your purchase and volunteering, you are making a difference. So if you want to be a part of changing lives and offering a better future for the Cambodian community, please call or text me at the number provided, or I'm open to email, whatever you want, however you want. There's no training necessary. You can see the beautiful displays and products that we have. They're recycled, and just the smiles on these faces kind of say all the things that's needed. Oh, you're muted.
There we go. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joey. I am a huge fan of Saxom. Some of you might know, many of you might not. My family and I lived in Cambodia for quite a while, so we have seen that poverty of self and financial poverty and many other kinds of poverty in person. And I truly appreciate the way that Saxom runs things, the way that they respect their workers, and the products that they put out are amazing. So I suggest you shop Saxom, but also if you want to volunteer with them, they are absolutely fantastic. Our last announcement will be with Kathy Cook, who's going to talk a little bit about the symposium.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. I want to make sure that you get this on your calendar right away. Saturday, October 23rd, we are having our 14th annual Human Trafficking Symposium, and it's going to shine a light on the illicit massage businesses that are prevalent in Colorado Springs, as well as labor trafficking that's happening in Colorado agriculture. And we're going to really be focusing on solutions to some very difficult and challenging human trafficking issues. This is a free event and it includes lunch, so you can't beat that. And we will be opening up registration in early September, so look forward to that. Thanks.
Thanks, Kathy, and thanks for all of your work on that. As you guys know, last year our symposium was completely virtual. This year we're going to try a mixed. This is like the 50th time I think we've said we have no idea what we're doing, but we're going to give it a shot. So we're going to try to live stream and have an in-person option for this event. So help us work it out. If you would like to volunteer, go ahead and reach out to Kathy too. We'll need people on the day of and help with any number of things that you can imagine. We're just excited to once again be able to offer a symposium to everybody. Okay, so we'll take the next 5 minutes for our usual networking time. Go ahead and reach out to people, new names or organizations that you see on the list here. Reach out and chat, and we'll be back in about 5 minutes to introduce our speaker.
Interesting to know.
As far as like to stay on their
We have about 1 more minute, so this is your warning to wrap up that chat, and I will introduce the speaker shortly. All right. I am pleased to introduce our speaker this evening, Ms. Alaine Pakkala with Lydia Discipleship, who will be speaking on the uniqueness of familial trafficking. Dr. Pakkala is founder and president of Lydia Discipleship Ministries. She enjoys training leaders, including professional counselors, lay counselors, and pastors to help them effectively minister to hurting people, especially those who have experienced the emotional shattering of DID or dissociative identity disorder. Through Lydia Discipleship Ministries resources, which include conferences, symposiums, and discipleship training materials, LDM is able to equip those who help the most deeply wounded. Having experienced her own healing from DID and SRA, Alaine understands the struggles that are faced on a daily basis by those who have been abused in childhood. Alaine, I am so glad that you're able to be here with us this evening. I am looking forward to having you share with us. I know there's a lot for all of us to learn about dissociative identity disorder and satanic ritual abuse. So thank you for being willing to give us your time this evening.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm glad to be here. I'll try to keep my voice up. I already mentioned sometimes I mumble, so if you can put your ear like this, if you can't hear me, why that will help me. If you aren't into taking notes, or if you're just wasted from your day, on our website, I put a 2-page outline of where I'm going and the things that I'm going to be talking about. If you want to access it now or later, it's lydiadm.org. That's spelled Lydia, D as in David, M as in Mary.org. So it's under the human trafficking page. I think it's where the articles are listed. So if that would be helpful. I understand that you've had someone come, I don't know if it's recently or not, and talk a bit about their experiences being familial traffic. And that, as you know, is my background, but I'm hoping that I could give some insights to add to what you already have heard about. You probably are aware of the formal definition of familial trafficking. It's the abuse or exploitation of a victim at the hands of someone they know. I don't think this static definition sort of touches the heart of our issue, so I'd like to begin by reading just a short couple of paragraphs from a book called Laura to paint the picture of a familial trafficked child. It's Thursday again. Rudy's Day, after bowling, $2, always the same, $2. Rudy puts it down on the table. Sometimes he pays in shiny $half piled up in a neat stack. Sometimes he pays in crumpled, old smelling green bills. I hate the smell of money. My father is in no hurry to pick it up tonight. He keeps drinking his half-warm cup of coffee. $2. It's time. Rudy is in kind of a hurry today. He skips the 2 or 3 beers he usually drinks beforehand with my father. My father looks at me and jerks his head to the side toward Rudy. It's time. The short hallway that ends in my room seems to be a long one tonight as I follow Rudy. My stomach is already remembering, already hurting. I shouldn't have eaten so much spaghetti. I'll probably get sick. Why was I so stupid? I think that touches the heart more of the predicament of familial trafficked children, those that are in the home and are pimped by either the parents or by siblings. In the last 30 years, as I've worked with survivors, most of them had experienced being trafficked by their parents. When we think of trafficking, we often think of different ages, people who are teens who may be abducted, or maybe young adults that get caught in a net, and before they're aware, it's too late to find a way out. But when we're talking about familial trafficking, we're really talking about child trafficking. Many of the abused ones the abuse was begun as they were toddlers even. The child stays in the home and is managed by the family members. And although there's a need for all kinds of trafficking to be under the radar, I think familial trafficking of all the types is one of the most invisible. They're often happening right under the noses of the community. Often someone who's involved in familial trafficking and perpetrating it is an upstanding member of the community. Because a child continues to live and go to school and go to normal activities, it really can be an invisible crime happening. In other kinds of trafficking, as you probably know, often drugs are used not only to cause addictions, but also to control the victim. However, in the childhood form of trafficking, that's really not done as much, because the child, for example, has to show up at school on Monday morning without making the teacher very suspicious. So there's often different ways of control that are used. And there's always a facade of normalcy. So that if you were to ask the neighbors, after things have come to light, they're just shocked. You know, you see them on television, and we had no idea this was going on. And it's, as I said, often the upstanding members of the community have a level of control in the community, so that often the children, of course, aren't believed. In my case, my father was a member of the school board and also a deacon in our church, and no one would have suspected anything. A large percentage of the victims that I've dealt with in the last 30 years, as has been mentioned, end up having DID, or dissociative identity disorder. I'm not sure how much we all understand or know about it, so I'll just give kind of a thumbnail about the disorder. Maybe we can begin by looking at why many victims that are family trafficking end up with that disorder. It used to be called multiple personality disorder, by the way, for some of you that know it by that. I'm sure we all know about daydreaming, what daydreaming is. It's basically putting your mind somewhere else than where you actually are. So for example, if you're at the dentist and you're trying not to listen to the whirring of the drill, you're thinking in your mind about your last vacation and how nice that was. So you're putting your mind someplace other than right there. Which, as an aside, you know, we can put people on the moon, they walk around up there. No one has been able to invent a silent dentist drill. I'm not sure why that is, but I think somebody should get on that. Everybody's brain is capable of daydreaming, and daydreaming is a very mild form of dissociation. But when there's severe or repeated abuse, especially in a very young child, the mind does something different. It takes the memory of the trauma that is happening, and it takes it out of the conscious mind and puts it in the unconscious or subconscious. And the strategy that the mind is trying to affect here is to blunt the intense effect of the abuse that it's suffering. To put it another way, I see dissociation as the brain's way to prevent insanity in children. It's as though the brain knows that what is happening is too much to process, and so it chooses to forget. It's not the regular kind of forgetting, it's a dissociative kind of forgetting. The memory of the abuse is totally forgotten until a later time when the memory is triggered. By being triggered, I mean there's something that happens later in life that reminds the person about some aspect of their abuse. For example, maybe a certain kind of aftershave that they suddenly smell as they're walking down the street, or they go into a room and it reminds them of something. Or one woman I worked with, before her memory of abuse had totally come back to her conscious mind, she kept telling me that she was smelling mustiness and smelling dampness. And it was only when her full memory was recovered that what her mind was remembering was the smell of the confessional booth at her church, where the priest was repeatedly abusing her. But just that smell reminded her, and then the memory comes flooding back. If a person is enslaved or trafficked, say for example, if they were 3 years old when it started, when they grow into adulthood and get married and have children, often when their daughter reaches the age of 3, something begins to be triggered inside. The parallel age is brought forward, and that's an example of triggering. You might ask why DID is unique to familial trafficked victims. Why don't all human trafficking victims end up with DID? I know a lady named Kaya who, when she was 7, her family was taken to Auschwitz concentration camp, and she was removed to a separate area from her mother, and she survived, although not all of her family members did. But the question came to my mind, why didn't Kaya or all the millions of Jews that survived the Holocaust come out having DID? Obviously, the level of atrocities would warrant that kind of dissociation. Decades ago, I read a book called The Death of Memory. And in it, the author talked about the different ways that people who went through the Holocaust coped, what their mind did so that they could survive. Some concentrated on revenge. They wanted to stay alive long enough to see that justice was brought to the perpetrators. Some other people, as they were standing out for hours out in the snow, they were blotting out what was happening. They were looking at the sky and thinking of birds and blue sky and things that were totally opposite of the atrocities that they were experiencing. Others cope by having a belief that they were bad people. That's why this was happening to them. And so it was their fault that they were being treated this way. So the coping skills that the brain did so that they could survive is not unlike what happens in the DID mind, but the difference is the age of the victim. And that's really important because in Kaya's case, though she was only 7, she had 7 years of being treated as a human being. She had 7 years of normal. She knew what normal looked like. And so the contrast of the atrocities then made it so that her brain was able to compartmentalize the normal past and the atrocities without dissociating. Mostly when you talk about the propensity to dissociate, you're talking about 2 to 3-year-old kids. Because in the normal brain development for the child, there are stages, and during that window of 2 to 3 years old, dissociation is a favorite for the brain to choose and as a coping mechanism. And once it's chosen that, as the abuse continues and they grow older, they still choose a dissociation and the complete dissociation of DID. Another reason that dissociation is common in familial traffic victims is that during that window of time I mentioned, the child can have two completely opposite things going on in their mind and reported as truth, and they can be totally opposite. So for example, if the little 2 or 3 year old is pointed over here is where the sun comes up, the sun always comes up there, and their brain says, okay. But then the next day, that same person says, the sun always comes up over there. They're able, because of the stage of brain development at that point, to have both of those in their mind without logically thinking, wait a minute, these are contradictions. So for example, if you have just a toddler who's being abused, and they have maybe what we would call part A of their life, that might be where whenever people are around, their father is a loving father, he's attentive, he's watching out for them. And then part B might be the abuse, the sexual abuse. For the little child, he can't differentiate and make a contradictory statement about those two parts of his life. He's able to live with both of those, and as a result, he doesn't see the need to disclose or mention it to the neighbors because that's just his life. But as he gets older, the brain says, now wait a minute, something's wrong here. Both of these things shouldn't be going on at the same time. I haven't found any reliable statistics about the different types of trafficking in DID. In other words, to show what percentage of familial trafficked children have DID or not, but the presence of siblings in the home in terms of an element that is placed in the home that is not normally there when you have a group of women who are being trafficked and moved all around to different sporting events. The siblings in the home can also provide confusion to the person who's being trafficked. Not all the children are necessarily trafficked or trafficked at the same time. I know a family of 10 children where only a few of the children were trafficked. But the siblings, the normal life of the siblings is in contrast to the trafficked life of the victim. And that in itself adds to the confusion in the brain in figuring out the two opposites and the two separate things that are going on. Another distinguishing factor in familial trafficking that's not found in other kinds of trafficking is the issue of betrayal. More than in any other form of trafficking where the victims did not know the perpetrators. In familial trafficking, it's either a parent or a brother or a sibling that is involved. It's especially devastating when it's the parent-child connection. One surprising statistic that I found that was given by the Counter-Trafficking Data Collaborative, they studied 12,000 victims and they found that 34% of the familial traffickers were mothers who were often assisted by a non-relative trafficker. But even with the abuse going on and the betrayal of the parents, the intense loyalty that the children have toward their parents can remain a very powerful thing and can prevent detection in itself. Well, what's the best way to help victims of familial trafficking? Mostly, it's the same as other kinds, I would imagine, being aware of the clues and the signs There's a lot of good awareness organizations also getting involved at different levels and in different organizations that work with the issue. And also trust your intuition. I think it's a God-given inner insight that can help us look for clues. If something doesn't seem quite right, it may not be quite right. And the last thing is, don't underestimate the power of kindness as you get to form a relationship with a suspected victim. Are there any questions?
No, just a second. Leona, let me unmute you. There you go.
Thank you. Yes, Alaine, thank you so much. That is really challenging content, but so powerful and helpful to hear that. Thank you. I do have several questions that have come in, so let me go through those. A couple of them were multiple questions from one person, so I'm going to kind of break them up one by one. So the first question is, I have DID and was not trafficked by family, but the ringleader was a family friend. Are you saying only familial trafficking victims suffer DID?
No, I'm glad you asked that so I could clarify it. Remember when we defined familial trafficking, it was by abuse by someone that they know. And so whether it was a neighbor or someone close to the family, there's a level of participation usually of some family member, not ours, but dissociation is in a broad, it has a broad brush, unfortunately, for those who have been abused. One of the things you notice, as I mentioned, severe and repeated abuse. That's another key, because if there are people that are older than 2 to 3 years old when the abuse happens, but it's in a very pattern, predictable, repeated pattern, then that can also cause dissociation and DID.
Thank you. And the follow-up question is also, I was in the network from age 5 to 10 and was groomed starting several years earlier. So is it an age thing?
An age thing in terms of having DID?
I think that's what that's referencing, yes.
I think, as I mentioned, if it's in that 2 to 3 year window, chances are that the brain will choose dissociation. Some people say it's 2.5 to 3, but roughly in that area. But if you were in it at 5 and groomed earlier, chances are that the age was an important factor there. And that's one of the insidious things about especially different cults, is they take children from families, or they work in families with trafficking the children, is that they often target that age to begin the grooming.
Thank you. Next question. Do all people who have DID have been sexually abused as children?
If I can be politically correct and say, yes, mostly. What we're saying is that, again, the repetition factor, the age factor, and in many ways, the intensity factor, there will be the dissociative disorder that needs to find healing. And it is healable. It is able to be healed.
Thank you. And the follow-up question there is also, can you talk about why so many women have been diagnosed with DID?
I think there are a lot of men that are not diagnosed with DID, and I think we would find that population in prison. Because the outworking of the rage of anyone who's been abused There seems to be a different matrix for women. I just was talking with someone who had seen a YouTube this past week about dissociation in prison. And they were talking about working to get the death penalty off the table when it's so obvious, and it's been confirmed that there's dissociation and DID. So I think there are quite a few men who, in acting out that rage, have gone undiagnosed and unfortunately aren't being serviced in the best way they could.
Thank you for that. All right, and then is it necessary for the person inflicted with DID to retrieve the memory? Can they heal without remembering the details of the trauma?
I think they can heal as long as they remember the memories that are significant for that healing. I don't think it's necessary to remember 10 years of wickedness in each situation, but there are certain things that are crucial for that person to find emotional healing, and those memories really need to be looked at. That's why a skilled counselor can be really helpful. And it's not so much the events, even though those are horrific, but it's what beliefs came out of those events.
Yes, that makes sense. Thank you. Those are all of the questions that had come in so far. If anyone has any other questions they'd like to ask, please go ahead and message those to me.
I'm gonna insert myself in here for a second, Liana. You talk about there's hope for healing. And we often in this group talk a lot about how the journey is very long for somebody who's been trafficked. And then potentially a whole lot longer for somebody who is has had such severe trauma that they have DID. What's the time frame that looks like? Like you offer hope, but what does that look like for somebody to be able to work through, and as I understand it, bring all of those personalities back together so the person is what we would consider more whole? And I might not have the right terminology on that either.
No, you do. It's always hard to say numbers, but to preface it with the fact that when a person finds healing, you have to think, okay, how are we defining healing? Are there no more triggers? Is it the person can hold down a job now? Is what's going on with their normal social life? To me, I come from a faith-based ministry, so in my world, the component of connecting with God again in an authentic way is part of it, but the emotional aspects as well. The person is able to not let the past intrude into the present, so that the past does not dominate the present. And for a while in the healing process, of necessity, it does. I know of some people who maybe 5 years have worked with a counselor on a steady basis, and at the end of the 5 years, it's not that the healing is over, because at the end, say, of those 5 years, if that's all it takes, at the end of those 5 years, they're starting from zero now. They were in the basement and things have progressed and they've found enough healing that now they're on the first floor. Now they have to learn all the things that they didn't have the luxury of learning as they were growing up, the social skills, learning how to regulate your emotions, things like that. They were busy staying alive. They didn't have the luxury to be fuddling around with that. But now there's a new kind of healing that comes, and that's why the importance of someone who walks alongside as a friend and as a mentor, as well as a counselor, are important.
Yeah, that's, I like what you said there. I also wonder, like, I personally have 3 people in my life, some current and some in the past, that were diagnosed with DID. And for the majority of the people here, we have some practitioners, some just regular citizens working regular jobs, not specifically in the trauma field. Like, what are the signs that we would see, and that would make us question maybe this person has a dissociative disorder, and then how do we help them?
Those are good questions. In terms of clues, when a person has been abused so severely, even after that window, say they start dissociating at 3 years old, and now they're 8 years old and the abuse is continuing. When the mind dissociates at 8 years old, it's as though that part of their thinking remains as an 8-year-old. And so you will often see age-related changes in vocabulary and the face. All of a sudden, you might be going down the street and there's a husky dog coming, and suddenly the person says, "Hey, look at that, there's a dog," or something way out of different voice range and different energy. And what's happened is a part of their thinking has, for whatever reason, responded, and I call it come to the front. And it's interesting that for me, healing also means that it isn't that the parts of their thinking somehow disintegrate or, disappear, but the parts take their rightful place. And so when you're with someone and you see these changes, one of the best things to do is to go with the flow. Just go with what's there. Begin engaging as though you were talking to an 8-year-old. Boy, that is a nice husky. Do you like dogs? I like dogs. Just going with that. The worst thing to do is like, oh, I think you've got some mental problems here. Just going with what's there as though you would be talking to that age person. It's almost a kudo for you, because it shows that that person is developing a trust in you. Because that wouldn't happen if the person didn't trust the relationship.
Wow, that's powerful. Leanna, were there any more questions that came through?
I do have a couple more that came through, and I also saw that Mary had her hand up. I don't know if you,
Mary, can you send a private message for us? I'll message you and you can respond to it. Would that work? Leona, go ahead and ask those other questions. I'll connect with Mary.
Okay. All right. Next question is psychiatry recommended and are medicines prescribed?
In general, a psychologist is more appropriate than a psychiatrist. I say in general. There are some cases where there is a mental imbalance that accompanies the DID, but DID is not a mental problem. And so typically drugs that are used, antipsychotic or other things, aren't very effective in the DID situation.
Okay, thank you. And then another question. I share your faith and work in ministry. Is it possible for your organization to connect me with a pastoral mentor who actually lived through trafficking as well? I don't know anyone who shares my experience.
Maybe if you can connect with me through the website, I can think through it right off. I don't know. I know pastors who are well aware of DID and have functioned as safe people for some of the people I've worked with. But in terms of someone who has been trafficked themselves, I don't know if I know of one.
Thank you. That's the end of the questions that I have at this point in time.
Okay, I think Mary, I'm gonna unmute Mary. I think she can't get it typed in. So, Mary, do you have a question for us?
Me?
Yes.
Okay. Did you say it's my turn to ask the question?
Yes.
Okay, I have a friend that I went to high school with, and everything seemed really, really normal when I went to school with her. She just seemed like a normal person. Okay, we're both 76 years old. Just in the last 2-3 years, she has alluded that a cousin abused her when she was 6 years old, and this happened repeatedly. And she keeps bringing this up and bringing it up, and she's stuck in this rut. I know that it would really be really difficult to get beyond this, but for her sake, I wish she would. She has numerous health problems, I think, due to this. And she's had therapy, but she confides in me a lot. I think I'm just one of the very few people she's confided in. I support her, I listen to her, I try to be uplifting, but how can she get out of this rut? She just can't move forward.
You mentioned that she had seen it. Has she seen counselors or?
Yeah, she's seen counselors. She's seeing a therapist right now, but she doesn't seem to make any progress, and she seems stuck.
Well, I think part of the mix is you as a friend being able, as you're doing, to listen. But there has to be a reason why a person is stuck. And sometimes a counselor that's very sensitive can ask questions like, what did it say to you when that happened? What did it mean to you? Because sometimes that's where the real issue is, the belief that came out of it, rather than merely the event itself. So I don't know whether you would be, at times, whether you would find an opening to ask her, what did those awful things mean?
Okay.
But it's not, there's some reason to be stuck, it's almost like being a detective as a counselor to find out why the reason is what's happening here. Because with therapy or other attempts at emotional healing, if there's still something that they can't get past, it's really a discernment thing to detect what's really going on there.
Okay. So I should ask her, what did this mean to you? Okay. And she keeps coming up with these different ailments and illness. It must be 10 or 12 different ailments she has now. And it keeps going on and on and on. And one of her problems is that she has anxiety, of course. So
yeah.
I
Sometimes I imagine it gets frustrating for you as her friend.
Well, fortunately, she's 1,000 miles away, but we talk on the phone and we text a lot. And I do what I can to help her. Perhaps if I was in the same town with her, it might be too overwhelming for me.
Yeah.
Mary, maybe you can connect more personally with Alaine through email too. I think maybe she could give you some good insights.
Yeah, I'd like to do that.
Yeah.
Because it's very frustrating. She's such a sweet, dear person, but it's so frustrating. I want the best for her. I want the best life for her. And she just doesn't make any progress.
Mhm.
I'm going to go ahead and put you back on mute. I do want to say, I do feel like I believe that there are a lot of people that have suffered extreme trauma, including sexual abuse and being trafficked. And their journeys are so long, and it's hard for us on the other side of things, because we do want that healing. We do want to see them succeed in life. And it's hard for us on this end. So taking care of ourselves, making sure that we've set good boundaries, so that we don't get overly frustrated and then want to quit, because they need us here constantly and consistently to help them, because the trauma was so intense. And for people who haven't had that specific type of trauma, because we've all had traumas in our life,
Right.
but for those of us that haven't had that specific type of trauma, sometimes we just have to take a couple steps back, take a couple of breaths, and then move forward and continue to be that support in whatever way, as long as it's healthy for us and it's healthy for them.
Right. One of the statements that early on I came to kind of summarize a boundary was to never work harder at finding healing for the person than they are working.
Mm.
And that might be a little deceptive, because they could be working really hard, but it doesn't really show that much that they're working. So it takes discernment, but
Yeah.
we don't want secondary PTSD in all the helpers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Alaine, thank you so much for being here with us. I know we could probably all sit, like, I have lots of questions brewing in my head, just with the experiences that I have had. So we could take a lot more time and chat longer, but everybody feel free to connect with Alaine via email, reach out to her and see what resources she has. If you know of somebody in your life that has a dissociative identity disorder. Alaine, one of the things that I really appreciated that you said, or two of the things that I appreciate that you said, one of the questions that you asked just in the last 10 minutes was, how do we define healing? And I think that goes back to what we were talking about with Mary. We all have in our heads this vision of what we think that healing should be, and what we would like it to be for that person, but we don't know what that healing is going to bring. And everybody does define it differently. And I think that's something that we have to come to grips with as people that are involved, especially in the anti-trafficking movement. The things that we come across. I appreciate that you asked that question. And I also appreciate that you said, never underestimate the power of kindness and the difference that it can make in somebody's life. We see memes all the time that say, you really never know. You come across somebody that's grouchy in the grocery store, but you really don't know what's going on in their life that made them grouchy. It could be something frivolous, or it could be something very intense and very deep. And our ability to just stay kind, to reach out, something that I tried to always be intentional with is making eye contact with people. And I've actually had people stop me and say, thank you for looking me in the eye, and thank you for smiling at me. That didn't cost me anything. Didn't even cost me a couple seconds of my time. I can look at people and I can smile and keep going, but you never know what that will do for somebody. And people that carry trauma are around us every day, and we have the ability to choose kindness. So thank you for saying that, Alaine. I appreciate it a lot. I appreciate what you offer. And I hope everybody in this meeting will take the time to go to your website, look at some of your resources, and refer you guys to people if they know them. So everybody, thank you for joining us in August. And I hope, I'm going to say this one more time. I said it last month. I'm going to say it one more time. I hope to see you in person in September at First United Methodist Church. We will send out all of that information in the coming weeks. So be looking for that. I'll let this meeting go for about another 5 minutes. If you want to continue reaching out, connect with Alaine and other people here, with Cynthia about the A21 walk in October, with Kathy about our symposium. Thank you for giving us your time yet again. Thank you for joining us from your homes or your offices or wherever you are. It's good to see your faces, but I do hope to see you in person soon.